In a world where truths are often distorted, an unsettling question arises. What secrets did Jesus really leave behind? Stories whispered among early Christians reveal the possibility of a hidden code, a secret language that could change everything we know about their message. Apocryphal texts, those considered forbidden, keep fragments of this lost knowledge, revealing a wisdom that the Church, for centuries, preferred to keep in the shadows. Imagine discovering that Jesus' words contain deep meanings, camouflaged beneath layers of conventional interpretations. What could these secret messages teach us about their true mission? What if, by deciphering this code, we could access a dimension of spirituality that has been deliberately forgotten? As we explore this intriguing topic, new questions arise. Who really controls the official narrative of Christianity? What truths are hidden beneath the surface of faith? Prepare yourself for a journey that challenges perception and reveals what has been erased from history. The mystery begins now, and the key to unlocking these secrets lies between the lines. Apocryphal texts and their relevance. Apocryphal texts such as the Gospel of Thomas and the Gospel of Mary have raised many discussions about what Jesus really taught. These writings, which were not included in the official Bible, provide a different perspective on the life and teachings of Jesus. For many scholars, they offer a window into a deeper understanding of Christian spirituality that may have been suppressed over time. This relevance is even more remarkable when one considers that these texts may contain teachings that Jesus would have shared with his disciples in a more intimate way. Analysis of these texts reveals that they often depart from traditional narratives. For example, the Gospel of Thomas is made up of a series of sayings attributed to Jesus, which emphasize self-knowledge and inner search. This contrasts with the more institutionalized message we find in the canonical Gospels. This difference raises the question of what Jesus' mission really was and how his words have been interpreted over the centuries. Furthermore, many of these texts address themes such as the duality between body and spirit, which resonates with various philosophical and spiritual currents. This suggests that Jesus' message was more complex than simple salvation and obedience to religious laws. The diversity of thought present in these apocryphal writings may indicate that there was a rich tapestry of beliefs and practices among early Christians. The relevance of apocryphal texts also extends to the historical context in which they were written. They emerge in a period when Christianity was establishing itself and, at the same time, facing many internal controversies. This era was marked by debates about the nature of Jesus and the interpretation of his teachings, which may have led to the creation of alternative texts that sought to preserve different views. Finally, reading apocryphal texts not only broadens our understanding of early Christianity, but also invites us to question the way spiritual truths were shaped over time. Through them, it is possible to see that the search for spiritual truth is a path that encompasses different interpretations, and that the richness of Jesus' message can be much deeper than the version presented to us. Secret language and symbolism. The secret language and symbolism are fascinating elements when talking about the teachings of Jesus. He often used parables and metaphors to convey profound messages, allowing his listeners to reflect and search for the meaning behind his words. This approach not only engaged his audience, but also provided a layer of protection for the more delicate and complex teachings. This can be seen as a communication strategy, where the simplicity of the story hid deep spiritual truths. Jesus' parables, like that of the Good Samaritan, are not just simple stories, but representations of ethical and moral values. They reflect a way of teaching that requires reflection and interpretation. Thus, the listener is invited to become active in the search for understanding, rather than simply receiving information passively. This technique aligns with the idea that spiritual knowledge should be discovered rather than imposed. Furthermore, the use of references to Jewish traditions is also a form of symbolism that Jesus incorporated into his teachings. In doing so, he connected his messages to a cultural and religious context that his listeners already understood. This not only made his ideas more accessible, but also enriched them with deeper meaning. By referring to known texts and traditions, Jesus established a dialogue with his audience that transcends time and space. Another layer of symbolism resides in Jesus' own disciples. They were often seen not just as followers, but as bearers of a message that would need to be interpreted and applied in different contexts. The use of secret language and symbols allowed teachings to be adapted and reinterpreted over time, leading to a multiplicity of understandings of Jesus' message. Finally, this ability to use symbolic language left a legacy that continues to this day. Many spiritual and religious traditions continue to employ metaphors and symbols to convey complex ideas. Through this type of communication, spiritual truths can be constantly explored and rediscovered, allowing each generation to find its own path toward understanding. Influence of Gnosticism. Gnosticism is an intriguing topic that intertwines with the history of early Christianity. This set of beliefs emphasizes the idea that spiritual knowledge is essential for salvation, but that this knowledge was reserved for an elite. This perspective contrasts with the idea of a universal message accessible to all, as is often promoted by Orthodox Christianity. The influence of Gnosticism on the understanding of Jesus' message raises a series of questions about what it really means to know spiritual truth. Gnostic texts, which often presented a dualistic view of the world, suggest that matter is inferior to spirit. This view may have impacted how early Christians interpreted Jesus' teachings. Rather than focusing solely on redemption and divine love, some Gnostic groups emphasize the pursuit of knowledge as a path to enlightenment. This differentiation is crucial to understanding the diversity of thoughts that coexisted in the first Christian communities. Furthermore, the idea that knowledge could be a privilege of the few raises ethical and philosophical questions about the nature of spirituality. If salvation is linked to secret knowledge, what does that say about the inclusivity and accessibility of Jesus' message? This reflection is important, since many of Jesus' teachings promote equality and inclusion. Gnosticism, by emphasizing the knowledge elite, may have created barriers that contradict the essence of the Christian message. On the other hand, the influence of Gnosticism can also be seen as an attempt to explore and expand the limits of spirituality. The Gnostics sought answers to profound questions about existence, which may have enriched the spiritual dialogue of the time. Through their beliefs, they provoked reflection on the role of knowledge and personal experience in the spiritual journey. Finally, the interaction between Gnosticism and Orthodox Christianity is an example of how religious traditions evolve and adapt over time. Gnosticism, despite often being considered heretical, left an indelible mark on the history of Christianity. This influence invites us to reconsider the diversity of interpretations surrounding Jesus' teachings and the importance of knowledge in the search for spiritual truth. Censorship and narrative manipulation. During the first centuries of Christianity, the early church faced the challenge of unifying a variety of teachings and practices that circulated among Jesus' followers. In this scenario, ecclesiastical leaders realized that some interpretations could threaten their authority and control of the doctrine. Thus, there was a tendency to censor or distort certain teachings that did not align with the official view of the church. This process was not just a question of power, but also an effort to maintain cohesion among the faithful. It is interesting to note that many texts that did not fit into the official narrative were considered apocryphal and therefore excluded from the canons of the Bible. The Gospel of Thomas, for example, brings teachings that diverge from traditional Christianity, suggesting a more direct connection between the individual and the divine. The exclusion of this type of text can be seen as a way of silencing voices that offered alternative interpretations, which led to a homogenization of the Christian message. Furthermore, the manipulation of the narrative also involved the creation of dogmas that became central to the Christian faith. These dogmas were often presented as indisputable truths, while other views were labeled as heretical. This process not only secured the powerful position of church leaders, but also shaped the understanding of Christianity in a specific direction, often at the expense of a broader and more diverse vision. Censorship was not just limited to written texts, but also extended to orality and tradition. Stories and teachings that did not fit the official line were often forgotten or omitted. Thus, what has come down to us is often only a fraction of what could have been the rich tapestry of teachings of Jesus and his followers. This manipulation of the narrative leads us to question what we really know about Jesus' original message. Finally, as we reflect on censorship and narrative manipulation, we are challenged to explore available sources and seek a deeper understanding of the roots of Christianity. The history of the Church is complex and nuanced, and it is essential to consider how these dynamics have shaped the spirituality and religious practices we know today. Cracking the code, methods and approaches. To understand Jesus' message and the possible hidden truths that may have been censored, it is essential to apply contemporary methods of textual analysis. Linguistics, for example, offers tools for examining the language used in ancient texts. By analyzing word choice, sentence structure, and writing styles, scholars can begin to identify underlying meanings that are not immediately evident. This approach helps to illuminate authorial intentions and allows for a richer interpretation of what has been written. Another important area of study is archaeology. With the advancement of excavations and the discovery of new manuscripts, such as those found in Nag Hammadi, we have access to texts that have been neglected for centuries. These archaeological finds not only offer new information, but they also provide historical context that can alter our understanding of Jesus' teachings. The intersection between archaeology and apocryphal texts, for example, can reveal unexpected connections and expand our understanding of the early Christian message. Comparative studies also play a crucial role in deciphering the hidden code. By comparing different religious traditions and texts from similar periods, researchers can identify common patterns and themes. This comparison reveals how Jesus' ideas may have dialogued with other philosophies and religions of the time, thus enriching our understanding of his message. This comparative approach invites us to see Christianity not as an isolated island, but as part of a broader conversation about spirituality. In addition to these methodologies, hermeneutics, which is the art of interpreting texts, also proves to be vital. This discipline teaches us to consider the cultural, historical, and social context in which texts were written. This is particularly important for understanding the metaphors and symbols used by Jesus and his disciples. By applying these hermeneutical tools, scholars can uncover hidden meanings and reveal how secret language was used by Jesus to communicate profound truths. Through a combination of linguistics, archaeology, comparative studies, and hermeneutics, it is possible to begin to decipher messages that may have been distorted or lost over time. These contemporary approaches not only illuminate aspects of Jesus' life and teachings, but also encourage us to continue our search for understanding and spiritual truth. Spiritual and philosophical implications. The discovery of a secret language in Jesus' teachings opens up a range of fascinating spiritual and philosophical implications. If we consider that Jesus used metaphors and symbols to convey profound truths, this leads us to rethink the way we interpret his message. The idea that there are hidden meanings suggests that spirituality can be a personal and unique journey, where everyone is invited to discover their own truths. This perspective promotes a more inclusive and less dogmatic understanding of faith. Furthermore, the possibility of a secret language teaches us that spirituality is not just a matter of accepting dogma, but rather of delving into deeper reflection. This approach invites individuals to question, investigate, and seek a personal connection with the divine. Instead of simply following rules, believers are encouraged to explore their own experiences and interpretations, promoting more authentic and meaningful spiritual growth. The ethical implications are also relevant. If Jesus used veiled language, this could suggest that ethics is not a rigid list of rules, but rather an invitation to moral reflection. This vision urges us to consider the nuances of real-life situations, promoting empathy and understanding rather than condemnation. Morality, then, becomes a dynamic field where people are called to discern what is right in varied contexts. Furthermore, the discovery of a secret language could influence religious practice. If spirituality is viewed as a personal journey, This can lead to greater diversity in forms of worship and religious traditions. This diversity is enriching and reflects the varied experiences of individuals throughout history. Religious practice then becomes more accessible and adaptable, allowing more people to find their own path. Ultimately, as we consider the spiritual and philosophical implications of this secret language, we are invited to enter a new era of understanding and connection. It challenges us to go beyond what we have been taught and explore new dimensions of spirituality. This search for meaning not only enriches our personal lives, but also connects us to a broader spiritual tradition where every voice and every experience has value. Apocryphal texts and their relevance. Apocryphal texts such as the Gospel of Thomas and the Gospel of Mary arouse much interest because they offer a different view of Jesus' teachings. These writings are considered apocryphal because they are not part of the traditional biblical canon. Many people believe that they contain hidden messages and teachings that have been deliberately excluded from the scriptures recognized by the Church. This exclusion raises important questions about what Jesus really taught and how his message was shaped over the centuries. These non-canonical Gospels present a more direct and, in many cases, more mystical view of Christianity. In the Gospel of Thomas, for example, Jesus' words are presented in the form of sayings that invite reflection. This style may seem enigmatic, but it often reveals deep wisdom that resonates with the spiritual experiences of various individuals. By studying these texts, researchers seek to understand how these teachings can complement or challenge the traditional narrative of Jesus' life. Furthermore, the relevance of apocryphal texts extends to how they reflect the beliefs and practices of early Christian communities. They allow us to glimpse a diverse Christianity where different interpretations of Jesus' message coexisted. This diversity is crucial to understanding not only the history of Christianity, but also the multiple forms that spirituality can take. Such texts open space for discussions about the plurality of beliefs and the individual search for meaning. Another interesting aspect is that apocryphal texts often address topics that were considered taboo or controversial in Orthodox narratives. For example, the role of women in early Christian communities is most highlighted in the Gospel of Mary. This leads us to reflect on how female voices have been silenced throughout the history of the Church. Analysis of these texts can therefore help to re-examine the position of women and the importance of their contributions to Christian spirituality. Thus, exploring apocryphal texts not only enriches our understanding of Jesus and his teachings, but also challenges us to reconsider the narratives that have prevailed over time. This journey in search of truth is fundamental, as it allows us to take a broader look at faith and spirituality, opening paths for new interpretations and experiences. Secret language and symbolism. Secret language and symbolism play a key role in how Jesus and his disciples communicated their ideas. Through parables and metaphors, they managed to convey complex messages in an accessible but also enigmatic way. This approach allowed people to reflect more deeply on the teachings, finding meanings that could resonate personally in their lives. The use of veiled language also served as protection, allowing more radical ideas to be shared without provoking immediate adverse reactions. Parables are an excellent example of this symbolic use. They often portray everyday situations, such as sowing seeds or caring for others, to illustrate deeper spiritual concepts. For example, the parable of the Good Samaritan is not just a story about charity, but an invitation to reflect on human compassion and breaking down social barriers. This ability to use everyday life to convey universal truths shows how effective the secret language can be in spiritual education. Furthermore, references to Jewish traditions are an essential part of this symbolic language. Jesus often alluded to texts and practices from Jewish tradition, connecting his teachings to a broader spiritual heritage. This not only validates your messages, but also inscribes them in a rich historical and cultural context. This intertextuality offers an extra layer of meaning, which can be uncovered through careful study of Scripture. The symbolism also extends to Jesus' gestures and actions. When he turns water into wine, or multiplies bread and fish, for example, these acts are not just miracles, but carry deep meanings about abundance, transformation, and the nature of the divine. Thus, every action of Jesus can be seen as a symbol that invites contemplation and interpretation, allowing different communities to find their own meanings. Therefore, the secret language and symbolism are not mere literary devices, but powerful tools that Jesus used to connect with his followers. This approach, which demands close and reflective reading, continues to resonate with those seeking to understand the depth of the Christian message. The challenge, then, is to decipher these symbols and understand how they can be relevant in our lives today. Influence of Gnosticism. Gnosticism is a fascinating topic when talking about early Christianity. This current of thought, which emerged parallel to Orthodox Christianity, proposed a worldview that focused on spiritual knowledge as the key to salvation. For the Gnostics, knowledge was reserved for an elite, an idea that contrasts with Jesus' message, which was often addressed to everyone, regardless of their social or intellectual status. This fundamental difference raises questions about what it really means to be chosen. Gnostic texts, such as the Gospel of Philip and the Gospel of Truth, offer alternative interpretations of Jesus' teachings. They emphasize the importance of self-knowledge and personal experience in the search for a divine connection. Rather than being based on dogma and rigid rules, Gnosticism proposes that true spirituality is an internal journey. This focus can be seen as a critique of the institutionalization of religion, which often prioritizes conformity to the detriment of individual experience. Another interesting aspect of Gnosticism is its dualistic view of the world, which distinguishes between the divine and the material. This division leads to an interpretation that the physical world is inferior or even corrupt, which contrasts with the more positive view of the material world found in several Christian traditions. This perspective can be challenging, especially when we think about creation and the intrinsic goodness of the universe. This tension between views can open up a space for deeper discussions about the role of spirituality in everyday life. Gnostic influences also manifest themselves in practices and rituals that differ from the Orthodox Christian tradition. Gnostics often performed rituals that emphasize the search for inner knowledge, such as meditations and secret teachings. These rituals aim to promote a direct experience of the divine, rather than a merely ritualistic or institutional one. This leads us to consider how different approaches to spirituality can coexist and enrich the experience of faith. Finally, the influence of Gnosticism invites us to re-examine what we understand by Christianity. By exploring these ideas, we can discover new paths to spirituality that value individual experience and self-knowledge. This approach can help us build a more inclusive and diverse understanding of faith, one that respects both traditions and personal pursuits. As we explore this fascinating journey through Jesus' forbidden code, it becomes clear that the search for truth is a path fraught with enigmas. If Jesus really used a secret language, what implications would this have for our understanding of Christianity today? Could it be that the hidden messages that he and his disciples conveyed contained keys to deeper knowledge? Apocryphal texts, often left aside, can offer us valuable clues. Just imagine what could be hidden between its pages. Are these words an invitation to reevaluate our faith and our connection with the sacred, or perhaps a warning about the manipulations that have occurred throughout the history of the Church? And you, what do you think about this possibility? Do you believe there are still secrets to be revealed? What more could be discovered if we dared to look beyond what we have been taught? We invite you to reflect on these questions and continue this search for knowledge. Join us on the next adventure, where we uncover more mysteries and revelations about the history that shaped our beliefs. After all, the truth may be closer than we imagine,